Get all you know about podcasts. We welcome you to an experience uniquely different. Please join us for our coverage of all entertainment on the fringe of society. The candles are lit, the lights are down low. It is now time to welcome our host as he steps up to the pulpit. The sacrifice has been prepared for the Black Mass.
Ghastly greetings, groovy ghoulies, and welcome to another edition of the Midnight Black Mass. It is officially autumn, so we can officially begin celebrating Halloween, my absolute favorite time of the year. So I hope we can take a minute to maybe talk about some horror movies this week on the show. But we've already had a discussion about what we were going to talk about. So without further ado, will introduce my co-hosts. First, the one-man gang bang, Andrew Alexander. How goes it, man?
It goes well. It's supposed to be fall, but it's still hot as Satan's nutsack outside, so.
Don't let it damper your spirit of the season.
It's killing me, but I'm ready for some nice autumn breeze.
And my other esteemed co-host, the legendary former pro wrestling superstar and now retiree, the Strong South Psycho Tank. How's it going, man?
Awesome. This motherfucker said Austin Autumn Breeze. That sounds like a fucking douche flavor or something, or like a douche brand.
Douches have flavors. The things that we learned here tonight on the Midnight Black Mass.
They have sweet flavor.
Autumn Breeze.
Autumn Breeze and Pumpkin Spice coming to a pharmacy near you.
God damn. Ugh. Well, some of them bitches out there probably need a fucking flavoring. You know, they want the guy to go down on them and shit, and they douche that some bitch out, but it still smells like a fucking fish market in Seattle. They need some goddamn flavor for that shit.
Some Pumpkin Spice or Autumn Breeze.
Yeah, Autumn Breeze.
I don't think I've ever said it, but man, one time I started eating this pussy, and oh my god, dude, I don't know what had happened, but I swear to you, on everything holy, I was down there for literally, I'd say about 6.3 seconds, and I just popped up and acted like I just had to fuck right then. I was like, let us fuck, because I had to get the fuck out of there, man, because it smelled, dude. I could let Tank wrestle a 60-minute Iron Man match against fucking Bicycle Sanders or whatever the fuck his name was, and take a massive shit before and after the match and bury my face square in his asshole, and it wouldn't have tasted or smelled as bad as this pussy did. And I'm not joking, man.
God damn.
So I do some fucking, and the whole time I'm just thinking, like, what the fuck is going on? What have I got myself into? So I get done, and I go to the kitchen, and I shit you not, I like stick my head under my sink, and I'm rinsing my tongue off, and I'm scraping it with my fingernails, and it's still, the taste is still there, and like I'm gagging. And like, I was like, well, yeah, it's time for bed. So I went and brushed my teeth, and I'm like deep throating this fucking toothbrush, just like, It was the fucking worst, man. I swear. I don't know.
Oh my god. I had an experience. I guess I was about a year or two out of high school, back when I was cool and like actually like went out and shit. And we were at this guy's party, and I'd met with this fine little young redheaded vixen, and we were kind of fucking around and shit. And she was like, well, "Let's go up here in this bedroom and do whatever." And I was like, "All right, cool. I'll be up here in like, give me a couple minutes." So I went and grabbed a couple beers, ran up the steps because I figured I was going to get laid. I opened the door, and this bitch is butt-ass naked, and the fucking room smells like a goddamn, like a rhino had just took the biggest dump ever. Is how sour her vagina smelled. So I was just like, I'll be right back. I closed the door, ran back down the steps, grabbed my buddies, and said, let's get the fuck out of here. And they were like, man, what? I go, I'll tell you in the fucking car. We'll go somewhere else. Yeah, that was my rotten pussy story for the night.
I think we all got one.
Well, let's hear it.
I mean, it's not really eventful. There was one or maybe a couple that weren't quite so ripe and, much less dramatic than you were able to explain. I, changed course. I was still fucking finishing the job one way or the other. It wasn't deterring me, but I wasn't staying down there.
Dude, and I've sucked it up before. I've been down there and been like, oh my God, man, this smells bad. But this one was just, oh man. And then there was one, I should have led with this one because it wasn't as bad. This one was pretty bad, but I just figured maybe I could get through it, and I just flipped her over and started eating her ass, and it was much better. And I just stuck with that. But it was real rough. See, people have asked me before, they say, Andy, why do you prefer to eat ass to pussy? And I think I found out why. Here's why, gentlemen. Ass in its most pure form, no matter how you break it down, pretty much, within reason, always tastes like ass. You know exactly what you're getting into. It's ass. But that pussy, that is a weird, wild, mystical world, and you don't know what the fuck's coming out down
there. Some are certainly more aromatic than others.
God damn.
Aromatic. That sounds like a good name for a finish. Tag team finish. The aromatic.
Aromatic.
And we'll know what it means.
Well, speaking of tag team finishes, yeah, I don't know. We might as well in the show now. Hell, we're not going to talk that.
Yeah.
So we did promise the people we were going to come back with a themed episode tonight.
Well, the theme
and talk about. Apparently, your previously scheduled broadcast has been interrupted.
I just want to say, I figured if I explain the joke, we still get a little comedy of it, but it's not as offensive. And I know I could have said it and it'd been funny, but I didn't. I just held back because she's a very nice, lovely lady, and I wouldn't want anyone to think that I was serious. But after that story, I wanted so badly to go, Dan, how is your sister? But I didn't.
Boo.
That's not true. If you're listening, I swear to God, that is nowhere near remotely true. Dan's sister's a lovely, lovely lady. I'm quite fond of her. She's a nice girl, and I'm sure she would never let a gentleman like me ever go near her vagina.
Well,
what more? Before we get into the whole theme, what about Cesaro getting his goddamn teeth knocked out last night and went on like a champ?
That's a tough
it was his fault.
motherfucker.
He did take that, full on face to the fucking post, but he just kept on going. I'd have cried like a bitch and fucking pulled a Jimmy Rave and ran the hell out and went back to the fucking back.
God damn.
That's a pretty ballsy move to be able to withstand that.
And I could be mistaken, but it actually seemed like he didn't get his teeth knocked out or break them. They are intact, but they pushed up into his gums. I think I read 4 millimeters. Like, can you think about that? That's worse than having them knocked out.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah, because that's going to be a painful removal.
And I think it'll be a perfect gimmick for him to have no two fucking front teeth, stick his tongue through it and shit, and be awesome. He could be the fucking Swiss hillbilly.
The Swiss George the Animal Seal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just thought it was pretty impressive. Like, Jesus Christ.
So, yeah, that was pretty nuts. Pretty awesome. Watched some of that show. I didn't watch all of it. I tuned in about that match and was in and out through the main event. Any thoughts on that?
Go ahead,
The main
Tank.
event sucks. God damn, I texted Andy this morning and was like, I think Lesnar was more blown up than I've ever been.
Yeah, the main event, it was a bit of a letdown. The build was really good, and the main event of SummerSlam with the four-way was awesome, I thought, and really well done. I don't know what was missing here. And obviously the finish left a little bit to be desired. I didn't really think Brock was going to lose, but shit, it's hard to argue that they shouldn't get around to pulling the trigger on Braun, man. He's really hot right now. He is really hot, and he has a great upside. The finish just beating him clean as a whistle. You got Heyman out there. You got you got toys on the floor and weapons, and you just beat him clean as a whistle. I don't really get it, but either way, the match was a bit of a letdown compared to what people were expecting, I think. But overall, the card was pretty decent. Cesaro was badass. Cena and Reigns was pretty damn good. I think they tried pretty hard at the end to make you think Cena's wrapping up, and he very well could be, but I don't think last night was his last night. A couple other things here and there, some pretty decent matches, but overall it was all right.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the deal was on that main event. Like I say, who am I to tell a multi-million-dollar company what to do? But I do feel like you only have a limited window on guys like Braun. And when they're hot, you might as well, kind of see how far you can take them. And that's how you can kind of make new giant superstars. But if you're just, determined, well, no, he's going to get beat because it's Brock and we need Brock strong, well, it's great, but, maybe you avoid that matchup instead of beating this guy clean in the middle. I thought it was a very short-sighted move on their behalf. A lot of people hate Lesnar. I think he's a pretty awesome attraction. He did seem to sandbag a little in that match, or lay down a little. I don't think he necessarily treated it like some sort of epic main event that was going to go out here and get this guy over. He seemed to just be there to do business and get the fuck out, which is unfortunate. I think that, I think it was a huge missed opportunity right there.
Any other thoughts, Tank?
I guess that's no. Is Tank still with us?
Well,
We might have lost Tank.
we knew this day would come. It appears Tank has died.
Don't fucking joke about that. I hope he's all right.
I take it back. I hope he's okay. I'm sure he just lost signal. We'll continue. Maybe he'll call back in. Maybe Fast Eddie can get him on the line with the great quickness that Fast Eddie is known for. But overall, good card. Maybe not quite up to the hot hype. That had a lot of hype, but like you said, who the fuck are we to say what they should and shouldn't do? Hopefully we'll see some rematches with. I would like to see Reigns and Cena in a rematch at Mania, or maybe even Brock and Braun. It seems a dead set on Reigns and Brock. They're so dead set on it that they might miss out on other opportunities, and that is something that happens. I mean, I know I've done it as a booker. I'm sure you've done it as a booker. You get an idea in your head, and you're going to go with it no matter what, and you kind of miss out on something a little bit, but we'll see.
Oh
We'll
yeah,
see.
no, I seriously, that's a good point. Like I those are lessons I still learn. You know, like, oh man, you know, I was so stuck on this because that's what I planned. That's what I'm going to go for. But man, you got to learn how to change course. I think you have the most success that way when you can feel the audience as opposed to just forcing shit out, you know.
Yeah, I mean, my thing that I always thought of, and I think people mentioned, you may have even mentioned, and I don't regret it. I definitely don't. But when young Gunnar Miller debuted, his first singles match was against the then Empire Heavyweight Champion Shawn Tempers. And I could have instantly, his first singles match, second match in his career, I could have put that belt on him, and no one would have batted an eye. It would have been like the most over shit, you know. But I didn't. I had other ideas as a booker, and I stuck with those. But that was one where it was like people were definitely kind of like, you know, you could just do that now and it would be beautiful. And it would have, but, you know, I didn't. And now the company's out of business, so maybe it's my fault.
So maybe I should have.
Yeah.
I don't think that had anything to do with you. You know, we're all guilty of like maybe pushing things past their expiration point. If it's a pet project of yours or something, you know, as a booker, that's one thing I think most all bookers are guilty of at some level. You know, I think educating yourself and learning from your mistakes over time is, you know, that's one of the things you can really learn from, though.
Yeah, I just got a little message from Tank. He had some technical issues with his phone, luckily, so he is not dead because my joke would have made me feel horrible. So he is alive. We can joke about him.
Okay, well, considering he has the most wrestling stories to tell, we can probably get a few in before he gets back on the line, and then probably turn it over to him in terms of like live wrestling experiences, which is kind of what we're going to talk about. But yeah, any other thoughts on what we were just talking about?
No, I'm looking forward to talking about some really good wrestling, and that was from my childhood, and your childhood, and Tank's childhood. What was your first ever live wrestling event? Do you remember it?
Yeah, I do, and this probably surprises a lot of people because of my Gypsy Joe connection. But you know, I got to more see like his stuff on home videos that family had shot and pictures, and you know, didn't really get to see him really wrestle on TV. It was a little before my time, and you know, he was pretty much out of the Tennessee area full time by the time I was like up and coherent. And so really my first wrestling memory watching wrestling on TV, besides like home videos of Joe, and, you know, like, I guess it was like Nashville and Memorial Auditorium footage that they had on like reel to reel, would have been WrestleMania 2 on, was it HBO or Showtime? It was one of the pay channels. My parents' friends were having some kind of party, and we, you know, all the kids of the people that were there were gathered around their TV, and they had on WrestleMania 2. And that's the first time I can like remember vividly seeing pro wrestling on TV. Hulk Hogan, you know, it immediately captured my attention. So I pretty much became a casual fan from that point. It wouldn't be until 1990 until I saw my first live wrestling event. And being a big WCW NWA guy, believe it or not, my first live event was a WWF house show. Well, it was actually a Superstars TV taping and a house show kind of combined, because there was a lot of marquee matches that they didn't put on TV, but they also filmed all like the squash matches and angles for the TV. And I think we kind of mentioned this ever so briefly on the last episode, but it was a pretty awesome card. Like if you were into the angles and shit that was going on at the time, and it was like seeing WrestleMania right there in Chattanooga, you know, because they used to be the deal in the arenas, you know, on TV you'd see the squash matches, in the arenas you'd see the superstars collide, the big matches. And so like the main event was Hulk Hogan versus Earthquake, and then we had Sergeant Slaughter versus the fucking Ultimate Warrior, and Randy Savage versus Jim Duggan, and the Boss Man versus Bobby Heenan in a ball and chain match. And I think we also had Rick Martel versus Jake Roberts. and we had The Undertaker against Pistol Pez Watley in a squash match where The Undertaker fucked up and did the rope walk and fell off the fucking top rope. And I'm sure they cut that shit out on TV, or maybe didn't even air that match. But, yeah, that was something memorable. I remember when, he going up to do the rope walk and slipping and falling off the fucking top rope and busting his ass. And Pistol Pez, like, jumping on him like it was the opportunity of a lifetime. Just what a great worker he was. Like, he was right there for it. And, like, I think the Road Warriors wrestled maybe Power and Glory, or maybe just did a squash match for TV. The Nasty Boys are there. Like, I mean, everybody who was a fucking top star at that time. It was like late 1990 in the build to the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, that sounds like a great first show. My earliest memory, I actually remember hating wrestling and desperately wanting to watch cartoons on Saturday. And my grandfather was a big fan for years and years and years, and I'd get to watch my cartoons, but he knew what time that WWF Superstars came on, and we'd have to watch that. And I threw a fit for a time or two, but then eventually it's you can't beat them, join them. And my stepdad, I was 5 years old at the time, he was actually a wrestling fan, so he also would tell me about it. Oh, wrestling's great. You give it a chance and watch it, and yada yada. So my first vivid memories at all that I can just remember is laying there on my grandparents' floor and watching WWF. And I was always a WWF guy. I would watch anything I could. I knew WCW and I would watch it, but I was a WWF hardcore guy. And growing and then getting older and getting the business and meeting like you guys all from the Chattanooga area, I found out you were WCW and NWA guys, and it boggled my mind. Like I was like, really? Like you preferred it? As a kid, preferred WCW, and you're all like, yeah, of course, we grew up in the South. And I'm like, well, shit, I grew up in the South, but WWF, I clearly could recognize was better. And what's even funnier about that is I think we've talked about it. I know we have off air that just a couple of years ago with the WWE Network, I went back and watched, I watched all the WCW pay-per-views in order. I watched the Clash of Champions in order. And that in-ring product as a whole is so much better. And it's so funny that it took me to my 30s to really go, holy shit, this is leaps and bounds better. As a whole, the WWF would have some really good matches, but start to finish, those WCW cards, NWA cards were better. But I was a WWF guy, and my first live event was actually in early 92, and I didn't get up to Chattanooga for anything until I was, like 16. So my first live event with WWF actually came to Dalton at the Trade Center twice in 92, and then they never came back. But I was a big Macho Man, Randy Savage fan, and Elizabeth. Loved Elizabeth. And the main event was steel cage match, Jake the Snake Roberts versus the Macho Man, Randy Savage, with a special guest. And I just knew it was going to be Elizabeth. It's got to be Elizabeth. It's got to be Elizabeth. And my stepdad took me, and sure enough, it was Elizabeth. She came out at the end, and I just was loving that shit. And I'm almost positive. I think Tank was at that show. He's talked about it before, and I don't remember specifics. And plus the two shows, they were both that year, and I went to both of them. They get kind of mixed up in my mind, but I remember The Undertaker. I want to say he wrestled Jim Duggan on one of those shows. But The Undertaker, I remember just being freaked out, not scared, but just like, holy shit, look at this guy. I'm pretty sure the Legion of Doom were on a show. The Bushwhackers.
The Legion, I was at that one that you're talking about. I was only at the one in Dalton. That was like my fourth or fifth show. And
okay.
So Legion of Doom would have wrestled the Natural Disasters at that show. And Bret Hart wrestled like the Berserker or somebody of that ilk. Do you remember, you being the big Bret fan, I'm sure you remember who you saw him wrestle live.
I did. He was there. I do not remember, but I kind of want to lean towards Berserker as well. But definitely somebody like that. It is that time frame. the Bushwhackers, just kind of the typical cast of characters, especially lower main guys, middle of the card guys. The main event being Jake Roberts and Macho Man, that was kind of the biggest stars. And then the second main event, I really don't remember for the second show, but nothing like a Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair, things like that. And WCW started, or I became aware of WCW they did tons of TV tapings in Dalton. Saturday night, mostly Saturday night tapings, but I went to pretty much all of those. I didn't really miss many of those, and that was a lot of fun. Just I don't have vivid memories of tons of stuff. I remember seeing Ric Flair wrestle. I remember one show in 94, 95, Hulk Hogan was advertised, and me being, at that point I'm 11 years old, and I'm smart enough to know the Hulk Hogan's not going to be at this show. This is Dalton, Georgia. He is not going to be at this show. And sure as shit, the first match on that card is a tag match, and it's Hogan and Savage. And Hogan comes out. And I honestly have never been a Hulkamaniac. As a young kid, I was an Ultimate Warrior guy. I was not a Hulk Hogan big super fan, but I was still blown away that the fact, and I was at the guardrail, had the hand over, get slapped, Hulk walking by. I was blown away that that's Hulk Hogan, and he's here. And then when that show aired, that match was last on the show. It was main event, and that was kind of the first thing that, not that I didn't know it was a work, but that was the first thing of okay, this is a big work. This is edited and spliced up, because I know Hogan was first match, but on the show he was last. And that just kind of...
Yeah, well, his first match because he want to get the fuck out of there and get back to the hotel, Nixon Beers, brother.
Yeah, of course. But being 10 and 11 years old, that was the first thing that just really said, okay, there's a whole lot to this, more than meets the eye. And I don't know why. That's just always stuck out. I've just always remembered that. And that's some great memories. My grandfather took me to all of those shows. And me being, he always liked to sit in the bleachers. He liked to be eye level. And now it makes perfect sense. I totally get it. But I always wanted to go down front row, get on the guardrail. I would always skip out and just go to the back and get autographs, which surprisingly I got to do all the time. There was no security and stuff. And, it's one of those where you look back, I wish I would have sit there with him a bit more and watch the matches, because, he's no longer around, and it would have been cool to get to think back of more times just hanging out with him and sitting, because he hated Ric Flair. He would, yeah, I think he liked him, but deep down he hated him. It was just so funny. But he would always love to see Flair get his ass whipped.
My great grandma hated Flair. She was kind of one of the early reasons for me watching wrestling. So, after I had seen the WWF stuff and I became a fan, my great grandma had already been a fan, so I got to watching USWA and more Memphis shit with her, because we used to get in syndication on ESPN. Sometimes you get AWA, sometimes you get Memphis, you get and then eventually it became global, and they had their own show. But I would always go and watch wrestling with great grandma, and she hated Ric Flair too. She goes, Daniel, I can't stand that old white-haired man. Oh, he gets out there and whoos, and he ain't no good. He just he can't win for cheating.
I would always
ridiculous shit out of me.
My grandpa would always say some stuff like that. Like when he would chop them, he would say, "Man, those slaps, they sound like they really hurt." And him, and I remember in the Attitude Era, Steve Austin, it'd always be so funny to me. He'd be like, "That Stone Cold, I tell you what, he's really hitting them. He's hitting those guys." He knew it was the work, but every now and then he would know. He'd be like, "Well, that one's really hitting him, that guy there." And he would say that about Flair and stuff. And why don't somebody shut that Flair up? He just talks so much. And what's really funny, this always remembered, especially when my grandfather's mind started to slip a little bit. He couldn't remember when stuff came on, but when I'd be around, I'd go in there and I'd turn wrestling on for him whenever it was on. And it got to a while there. If you remember, I mean, I know you remember, mid 2000s, wrestling was on pretty much every damn night of the week, and I'd turn it over there on Thursday nights. I think Thursdays for Impact. And I swear to you, after a couple of weeks of watching that, he said, "Man, I just don't like this one as much. They talk too much." And I was like, you know what? You are absolutely right. Even he can see that Impact sucks.
Oh, yeah. My great-grandma used to say that before she died in the Attitude Era. I think she would have died, like, in the middle of the Attitude Era. And she used to say that, "Oh, there's too much talking, not enough wrestling."
Yeah, and he would say little things about the women in the Attitude Era. Nothing crazy, but just, well, good Lord, she ain't got nothing on. just little stuff like that that'd crack me up. It's looking like Tank's not going to be able to join us, which I guess is okay, because maybe we could continue this next week, and that motherfucker will take up the whole hour. So we better.
Yeah, I was about to say, we don't even need to call in next week. We can just take a night off and just let Tank call in and tell his stories.
Well, we'll start the show, and then we'll say, "Tank, tell us some stories," and we'll just hang up, and that motherfucker will talk all the time. But yeah, I got to go to a lot of those shows, and ECW came to Dalton 3 times, and Chattanooga once that I know of, and I got to go to those as a teenager, and that was, man, I was super excited about that shit. And I went to the ECW pay-per-view that was in Marietta, WrestlePalooza. I got to see the WWF pay-per-view, the Final Four in Your House in Chattanooga, which I believe you were there, and I know Tank was. Were you at that
I was
show?
not, and I have a hilarious story about why I was not, but I'll tell you that in a minute.
That's always really cool to me, because Bret Hart won his 4th world title. He lost it the next night on Raw, but just the fact that I did get to see him win a world title in person, that was the only good thing on that show, honestly. But that was cool that I got to see that. I was really excited about that. And then, shit, it wasn't much longer after that. I got in this fucking crazy business and been to a couple live shows since then, here and there. Been to some WrestleManias. Been in a WrestleMania. That's a big highlight for me. But what's your story? I'm pretty sure I've heard the story about why you weren't there, and it is hilarious. So let's hear it.
So it was my dad's weekend. My biological father, who I have a pretty good relationship with now, but there was some rocky times when we were a kid. We've kind of rebuilt the old relationship, but that was in a really time when he was really shitty, and so he it was his weekend, and he promised me and my best friend Muji that he's gonna take us to the Final Four, and like, to his credit, he had taken us to most of the other wrestling shows we'd been to. Like, Muji's mom took us to a couple, but, up to that point, like, he took us to a lot of wrestling shows. Like, not all of them, but a lot of them. And so, he picks us up, headed out. He's like, "Oh, hey, I got to stop right here just a minute and pick up my girlfriend." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So he stops and pulls into this bar, and he goes into the bar, and we were like fucking kids, and goes into the bar, and he gets in a huge knockdown, drag-out fight with his girlfriend. And of course, we can't go into the fucking bar because we're children, so we're just like sitting in the fucking car, and like 5 minutes, like, we sit there for like 3 hours, like 5 minutes till pay-per-view time, and he fucking still's not out there. So Muji called his mom, and she just came and got us. And like, we drove back to my house and got it on fucking pay-per-view. So the goddamn pay-per-view was in my house, but I didn't get to go see it because of some extraneous bullshit. But, yeah, so that was my Final Four story. I did get to go to Halloween Havoc 91, which was another one of the pay-per-views held in Chattanooga, featuring the Chamber of Horrors match. Oh, yes, I saw the Chamber of Horrors match live.
That's not really the feature event on that show, and I'm not gonna give the specifics because he'll murder me. But I know Tank was at that show. So
that's where he's dancing to PN News.
You said it, not me. But I'm not going to say anything else other than if you're listening and you want to go watch Halloween Havoc 91, it did take place in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and you might spot Tank on there, and it's the funniest fucking shit you'll ever see in your life. That's all I'm going to say, though.
That show was awesome, though. They gave away free Jason masks to all of the kids, and it had meet and greets outside beforehand and shit. It was really badass.
Yeah, I wish I got to go to some of their shows that young. I mean, like a pay-per-view being that young, that would have been, because I was 7, man. That would have been so amazing to me. I went to Raw in the Georgia Dome. I did get to do that in 1999. I don't remember it being a particularly awesome show, but I can tell you this, the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life was Steve Austin came out, that glass hit, and it's in the Georgia Dome, so I don't know how many people there, but it was fucking packed, and it was I want to say it was the first Raw in Atlanta. Hell, probably.
Yeah, I was at a Raw in 01 in the Georgia Dome, the night they did the ECW invasion, and that was a hell of a venue. I mean, getting that many people. It wasn't Attitude Era, so it wasn't super hot, but it was still pretty hot then. And I wasn't there as a fan, but it was still really awesome to see that up close and personal like that.
Yeah, well, I was just in the crowd, and when Austin's music hit, that pop, I mean, it hurt my head. It made my ears ring. It was so unbelievably loud. It was crazy. It was the craziest shit I've ever experienced. I was already in the business, but I went to 2 Rumbles in Atlanta. I went to the one in 02, and then whatever the fuck the other, 2010. Got terrible seats for
I
that.
also went to the one in 02, one of a very small handful of shows I've been to as a fan since I've been in the business, but Stephen Prazak got us the fucking hookup at that show through Canyon, and we got the fucking luxury box, and it was awesome. It was fantastic. I might even say. They're bringing us fucking drinks and food, and they got fucking monitors in the goddamn suite, but also can see the ring, clear view from. It was awesome. That was a cool show. It was where they had Flair and McMahon and they're bleeding buckets. It was great.
Yeah, and I wanted to experience the Rumble, just the whole countdown and just everything like that. I mean, it wasn't as fun as the Rumbles of childhood, but they're kind of hard to compare with those just because they are from your childhood. But it was very cool to get to see one, get to be at one. But man, being a kid, it's so. How many wrestling fans did you have at school? The die-hard wrestling fans like you were. Did you have a bunch, or did you just have a handful?
Small handful. I mean, not a ton. There were more earlier in school, and as I got more into it, of course, the fans started dwindling. There was a lot of fans left over from the mid-'80s WWF boom when I started school. And then those fans, a lot of them kind of disappeared in the early 90s. And, but there was a good, I mean, it's the South, so it was still water cooler conversation. When I say a small handful of diehard, yeah, maybe 10. But as far as people who watched wrestling and talked about it, 50 to 100. you know.
Yeah, I definitely, I'd have those friends that were fans that would watch and could talk to you about it and everything. And but as far as like in elementary school and middle school, the diehard like that I knew, there was one, and it was me. Like the guy, like that is the wrestling guy right there.
That's why you should have grown up in Saudi Daisy. There would have been a few more.
Yeah. That definitely seems to be the case. But I'll tell you what, man, you hit about 98 or even a little before that, and you start seeing NWO shirts and Austin 316 shirts and DX shirts everywhere, and people coming up to you, hey, man, did you watch Raw last night? Did you watch Nitro? And I'm thinking...
Oh, that shit used to piss me off. Like, some people were like, why do you get mad, Dan? Why do you get mad? They like wrestling now, and you like wrestling, so you think that's cool. Like, nah, fuck those fucking posers. Those motherfuckers make fun of me when I wore a goddamn Ultimate Warrior jacket or a fucking Macho King Randy Savage shirt 3 fucking years ago. But now these motherfuckers like wrestling. Fuck these motherfuckers. That was my attitude.
I agree 100%. I mean, I would be cool and talk about it just because I dug that shit. But thinking, like, especially thinking back, but at the time, I remember like kind of grinding my teeth, being like, man, I've been watching this shit since day one. Where have these motherfuckers been? But
I remember something just before we move off of this topic, just to hold that thought. But I remember one of my first memories of like wrestling water cooler discussion at school was we were in like the auditorium in the morning gathering before they called everybody to line up to go to class, and this one fucking kid was like, I can't believe I missed fucking Flair and Fujinami.
Man, that is about.
And I just heard that, like my ears perked up, and we started talking about wrestling. So.
Yeah, that's funny, man. Yeah, I mean it was cool. I had fun. I mean, there was one kid. He was a little older than me. He lived on the next road over. He was pretty diehard fan. He was more of a WCW guy, but luckily his mom would let him order pay-per-view sometimes, and I'd go watch them. And then he moved, but not too far away. So when he'd order one, I'd get my mom. I'd hound her till she'd take me over there, and so that was awesome because I got to watch tons of pay-per-views that I definitely would have not got to have seen because I ordered. I mean, I literally before the whole that. I mean, I'm sure you had the whole free cable, free pay-per-view hookup, the boxes that they did for a while, which was awesome. But before
we didn't have that, but some of my dad's sketchy friends did. So it was like, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to stay with Dad this weekend because there's a pay-per-view. Like the only reason I'd want to go because it's like his sketchy neighbor or somebody would have a paper box, and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go fucking watch this pay-per-view. I've heard some really hilarious shit watching pay-per-views with my dad's friends.
I'm sure. Unfortunately, I always got to watch with like one or two kids. No crazy adults. But you actually know that guy. You saw him get fucking bear clawed by Iceberg.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Well, I guess I ruined that hookup for you, huh?
Yeah, he'd get to order some of the pay-per-views, man, and I'd get to go watch them, and I was happy as hell because I mean I literally can remember I remember ordering 3 pay-per-views. I got my dad let me order WrestleMania 10. I wanted to see Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, and then I just knew he'd win the title, so I was super pumped. He let me then order SummerSlam 94 with Bret and Owen in the cage, but mainly, I mean, I was all for that, of course, but I had to know what was going down with this Undertaker versus Undertaker. I was like, how are they going to do this?
You think is Leslie Nielsen going to get to the bottom of this?
Yeah. And then Mom actually let me order one. I ordered Bash at the Beach 96 because I had to know who this third man was. I had to see.
So, my pay-per-view ordering experience, and mine was pretty similar. Like it was not a regular occurrence, but I was trying to finagle a way to go watch them somewhere. And if all else failed, me and Muji would turn on the Scrambled channel. These kids these days with their digital TVs don't know shit about the Scrambled channel. But you can turn on there and find what's the porn. You might see a nipple. You watch wrestling, and you can pretty much tell what was going on because you can hear the commentary. So it was like a radio broadcast of the fucking pay-per-view, worst case scenario, It's just like, hey, better not get to watch it.
Yeah, I love. I watched many pay-per-views with the Scramble Vision. I would stay up. Man, I'm telling you, it's hard to remember because you get so into the business and enthralled with it, and you get so fucking bitter and you change and everything. But I'm telling you, man, as a kid, I was so beyond obsessed. I was so unbelievable. Like,
same. It was a daily thing.
Yeah, it was my
sun up to sundown
reason for being. It was like food, air, wrestling. Like it was, and not even in that order. But I would watch those.
I remember, dude, I almost got in a fight with a kid at daycare one time because he took my Arn Anderson figure and rubbed the fucking top of his head on the concrete to try to scrape the rest of his bald spot off. I'm like, you're fucking it up.
Oh, that motherfucker. I hate that kid already. But I would watch that Scramble Vision, man, and I would wait for the replays. I would stay up like all hours of the fucking night, I'd fall asleep to it, listening to it, barely seeing anything. And no shit, I can remember watching still basically my favorite pay-per-view of all time is SummerSlam 91, maybe because of this reason, but I just love it. But I remember watching that in Scramble Vision, and I remember watching this match, and, you can barely see it, but you can hear it, and you can kind of feel it, and you can make it out. And I remember watching the match thinking, man, this match seems crazy. Like, I got to see it. So when that shit came out on video, I rented it, and I saw Mr. Perfect versus Bret Hart, and I was like, that guy right there, that guy in the pink is the guy. That is the greatest.
That's my dude.
Of all time. Yep, that's my dude. Like, the Ultimate Warrior. And also, that was also the pay-per-view where the Ultimate Warrior disappeared, and he was like my first favorite. So after that, I was just like, that's the guy right there. That guy is the best. And the legend just grew and grew and grew and never looked back. But it was all because of the Scramble Vision, SummerSlam 91, and just seeing this. Mr. Perfect had the blue singlet, so it's like this pink and blue, and you're trying to make it out. You're like, what are they doing? What are they doing? And just, I was hooked. I was hooked on that. It's funny.
What's that one?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so looking at my pay-per-view, like, history, I think Starrcade 91 Battle Bowl was, like, the first one we ordered. And, I got my mom to get it for me for, like, a late birthday present. And then my second would have been WrestleMania 9. And then, like, maybe the Final 4. And then after that, we started getting them pretty regularly because me and Muji would just, like, do chores and, like, mow the yard. Like, just all kinds of shit we could do to earn money to watch the next pay-per-view. It was like a crack habit. Once we were able-bodied teenagers and could earn a little scratch around the neighborhood, we would do all of that to try to get a pay-per-view fund together. So we would get pretty much every pay-per-view from, like, 95 on. Based on that, but before that it was pretty limited. And I did have another friend, Tim Urin was his name, and I used to go over to his house and watch the pay-per-views. That's where I saw SummerSlam 91, and also saw WrestleMania 6 there, and like a bunch of the WCW, like 93, 94 pay-per-views. King of the Ring 95 we got over there too.
Yeah, actually, I forgot I actually got to order Royal Rumble 93 randomly because that dude I mentioned earlier, for some reason he couldn't order it, like it wouldn't work, but he had the money. He's like, well, get your mom to order it and I'll pay for it. So he actually paid for it, but we ordered it in my house. and it's not a extremely memorable Royal Rumble, but it was just cool to get to watch it, especially back then before the free cable hookup. Anytime you got to actually see one was just a legit treat because it didn't happen very often. It was funny you mentioned your Arn Anderson action figure. I would, I remember the first time, I can remember it, man. Fucking third grade having show and tell, and people just brought, as a kid, I bet these kids don't even do show and tell anymore, man. But you would just bring shit. And I remember I had this bag, which I've recently repurchased, but it was this bag with Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior on it. It was like a duffel bag, and I would keep my Hasbro action figures in there. And I took them all to school for show and tell, and all the boys, they lost their minds. Because I had, pretty much I had a good collection going, even by third grade. And we would play with that shit. And I remember guys getting it and just, how kids play with toys? They would just, bang them together, bam, 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 bam. And I remember legitimately, grabbing one from a guy and saying, no, that's not how you play with those.
That's not how you do it. No, I would hate playing wrestling figures with other kids because they're fucking idiots. They would always just want to go, or try to wrestle you. It's no, motherfucker. Fucking, we'll do a tag team match, and I'll have this part of the match, and you have that part of the fucking match, and you actually try to have a fucking match. That's how I do. I got wrestling over a lot of people, even back then, because I'm worried about it making sense and having psychology and shit.
Yeah.
And did you ever use the fucking, oh man, the best trick for getting good color on your action figures was a Crayola washable red marker, because you could stab that motherfucker in their head just as hard as you could, and it would leave this clumpy looking clotty shit, but then the blood would run down and it looked like real blood, and it was fucking awesome. And you could just take it in the sink and wash this shit right off. But then, of course, if you were a lazy fuck like me, you would forget to wash it off, and so you'd go back and your action figures would have pink tints to their faces.
I actually, no, I never did that. I never had any fake color or anything big, but it's funny.
Oh my God, my Ric Flair's hair was pink.
That's just funny that we had the same kind of mentality. My favorite thing to do with the action figures would be Royal Rumble, and I would write.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd write 1 through 30 on pieces of paper, and I would get my figures, and I would draw numbers, and I would, put them in order, and I would do it legit. I would have a watch, or as best as I could, and I'd keep up, and every 2 minutes I'd be doing it. And pretty much the winner of the Royal Rumble would always be my newest action figure. But this is true. It's so fucking funny to think about. The runner-up was always Bret Hart. The new action figure got to go over, but he had to eliminate Bret Hart to win.
Me and Muji, we would do, I guess, would early training for learning to call shit on the fly, because we would love to do these, we would do the similar thing to you with the Royal Rumble. Sometimes we would do, a blind draw Royal Rumble. So it would be we'd just stick the figures in a bag, count out 30 guys that would be in it. They stick them in a bag and just draw them, randomly. And of course, you'd have to scat the entrance music. Oh, it's Bret Hart.
Yeah.
And, we would always, fuck with each other and try to come up with creative finishes and, silly little angles and shit. And it was, we would spend hours doing this shit when we were kids. Our parents would yell at us because we were up at 4 in the fucking morning just, playing wrestling figures nonstop. We'd do it for days at a time.
Yeah, pretty much all that I did, by myself. Occasionally have a kid around to play with, but like I said earlier, I didn't like really the way most kids would play with action figures, especially wrestling figures. So that was kind of my own thing. I didn't have that.
I had to do the same thing, because I had to do the same thing for many years until I hooked up with Muji, and then once me and him, we were friends from a small age, but we didn't really discovered the shared love of wrestling until a few years later. And so once we did that, then we're best friends,
Yeah, and I would always do. I've got a feeling you did too, but I would always do commentary with the matches.
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah, that was my big
thing. I would like find a G.I. Joe or some other action figure that looked like the fucking commentators and like make a little table and sit at ringside.
What about the old magazines? Did you buy those as a kid?
Fuck yeah. The Wrestler, Pro Wrestling Insider, PWI, like WWF magazine, WCW magazine. If it had wrestling on it, I was buying that shit.
Yeah, it's sad to think about when I was old enough to work, so starting at like 15 when I had a job, that's when I expanded and bought the Wrestler and PWI and Inside Wrestling and everything. I bought all of them. Every month I would buy them every single month. And you think back, that's a lot of fucking money. Like I was dropping, it had to be like $30 a month just on magazines. But as a kid, I had to get that WWF magazine, and I got not every issue, but just as much as I could. I'd go to that damn grocery store with my grandma, and that was the goal. Like, oh, just let me go to the grocery store. Let me go to the grocery store. And most parents are probably like, they don't want the kids asking for a bunch of ice cream and a bunch of fucking cereal. That wasn't my concern. I'd see that new WWF magazine, and I would just beg until I got that shit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion. Anytime we went to the store, I was looking for a wrestling magazine. And, between my grandparents and my mom, and some of my uncles, I stayed pretty stocked up.
What about renting the videos? What do you have, a Blockbuster? Do you have a mom and pop? What you do?
Shit. Yeah, we didn't have no Blockbuster. We had fucking, what was it called? Video Matinee was the name of the place. And it was just this little mom and pop shitbox video store up on Saudi Lake. And they had all the old WWF Coliseum tapes and all of the Turner Home Video WCW releases. And I rented every fucking one of them.
Yeah, I was obsessed with renting the videos and finding new video stores and seeing, which ones that have, because some would have, and a lot of people listening to this, if you're younger than us, you don't even get what we're talking about. But video stores used to be fucking everywhere. Like, I bet Dalton had like a dozen easy, and they were all booming. And I would just go to, a couple different ones. Blockbuster, coincidentally, was probably the worst, but some of the mom and pops, and they would have the videos, and I got into, I learned how to copy them, so I started renting as many as I possibly could and making the copies, and, I would take like note cards and tape them to the box, and I would write the card, like the matches, and so I would know what's on the tapes and stuff, and then I found a video store that sold videos, and they had tons of old shit for like $4 and $5, which I could afford. So I started buying them, and then it was kind of getting to that point where they were slowing down. They weren't dying off like they are now, but they were definitely, starting to shut down here and there. So I'd get the damn yellow pages, and I would fucking call video stores and ask them, do you have any wrestling tapes for sale? And they would say yes. I would hound my mom until she would take me, like, all over fucking Northwest Georgia. And she would take me, and I would buy whatever tapes they had, and started my wrestling video collection, which I don't know if you ever saw before I broke down and sold it, but it was pretty fucking sweet.
Oh, I did, yeah. And now those things are worth a ton of fucking money. It's just like,
yeah, I made, just on my WWF videos, I did like almost $1,500 like after eBay fees when I sold them, because I had a very good run of them, and it legit, like, I buy and sell shit all the time, and I've sold so much wrestling shit, it's not even funny, magazines and figures, but it legit, like, hurt me when I sold those VHSs. Like, it was just, your childhood is officially, I think that's when you become an adult. It's like, I've just sold my wrestling videos. I'm an old fucking fart just waiting to die.
Oh, yes. Well, we're out of time. That was a really fun episode. Just kind of rekindling wrestling fandom. Love talking about that. Can probably talk about it a whole nother episode. So we'll have Tank back on next week to give his input.
Yeah, I look forward to that because, man, he's got the stories.
Oh, abso-fucking-lutely. All right, man. Well, great show. Thanks for joining us, fans. Everybody listening, we appreciate you. We'll be back next Monday night. Keep one foot in the gutter and one fist in the gold. Good night.